We're opening with a fascinating guest, a subject matter that's of interest to everyone, and I am delighted to have on David Rivinus. I want to spell his last name. It's Rivinus. He is a dream analyst, and he is the author of Always Dreaming, Gaining Insights from the Metaphors of Our Sleeping and Waking Lives. The book is published by Ozark Mountain Publishing. It's available in paperback and ebook. And I want to give you his website. It's fascinating. teacherofdreams.com. That's teacherofdreams.com. And David has lectured and facilitated workshops on dreams for over 4 decades across the world. And he's got some startling revelations in his new book, and he's here to talk about it. Welcome. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, Stu. It's really a pleasure to be on your show.
First, I just want to bring up the fact, what are the basic differences? Because I was thinking about this as soon as I saw it, between daydreams and night dreams. Are they different?
Well, what I'm talking about here is not daydreaming per se. I'm talking about a way of looking at your daytime experiences while you're awake and seeing them not only as objective experiences, which of course they are, but also as metaphors that are an attempt to communicate with you on a different level, a subconscious level. Usually about conflicts that are going on in your life. So when I talk about the daytime metaphors, I would take a normal experience, anything that might happen to you during the daytime, and especially if it's startling or if it's upsetting in some way, to look at that not only from its objective perspective, but also from the perspective that it might be an attempt on the part of life to communicate with you on a different level. I can give you an example.
Please give us a couple of examples, because I really want this clarified for people.
Okay. Well, let's suppose you're in your morning commute. It's something that you do 5 times a week, and it usually goes very smoothly. But on one day, let's say there's a near miss with another automobile, and you end up arriving at work and you're shaking and you're upset and your heart rate is elevated, and you wonder why all of a sudden that happened to you when normally the commute would go smoothly. You can dismiss that. You can say, well, that's just one of those things that happens to people from time to time. But it's been my experience now working with this phenomenon for several decades that actually these kinds of experiences are quite deliberate. They're deliberately placed into our lives to teach and to elucidate conflicts that we are dealing with in any given moment of our lives. The way to read them, and that's really what the book tries to show, is to deal with them as metaphors. So yes, you had a near miss with another automobile, and that you can see from its literal point of view. But if you think of your car as being a vehicle, now metaphorically again, a vehicle of something that gets you from one place in your life to another place in your life, and you have a near collision with this, then there might be a conflict very similar to what you might have in a dream when you are asleep at night, a conflict about where you're trying to go, or perhaps a clash of 2 different points of view that you're struggling with in your own life or your own philosophical approach to life. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You're wide awake. You're not necessarily daydreaming. That's a different phenomenon. But
okay.
You experience something that leaves an impression. It leaves a strong impression, very often one that's not entirely pleasant.
But it's unsettling because it distracts us. Is that correct?
It's unsettling, yes, and it distracts us intentionally. The idea is to grab our attention, and that's the same thing that happens at nighttime when let's say, have a nightmare. We wake up in the morning and might be in a cold sweat over some scene that we seem to have been involved with in the night, and it's unsettling because it wants us to pay attention to it. I can give another example.
Yeah, we'll give one more, and then I'll follow up here with a question.
Sure. Okay, well, this happened to a friend of mine who is actually, she teaches art out of her own home, and she needed to run some errands in preparation for a new class that she was organizing. And she took out her car keys and got into her car and stuck the key into the ignition, and it wouldn't turn. And she tried to get the key to turn so that she could turn her car on, and finally had to get her husband out there, and they worked on this thing for about a half an hour. Well, that's the kind of experience that's bizarre, a little bit strange, and she kind of blew it off, as one might expect an experience like that to be dismissed. But then the next day, she had a visitor from a friend of hers, and this friend has a car with a keyless ignition. It's one of these electronic things. And the friend tried to get into the friend's car, and that car wouldn't start. So there were two strange experiences, very similar to each other, that happened right in a row, 2 days in a row. And my friend, who is used to working with dreams in this way, decided, well, maybe this is something I ought to look at. And she realized that, again, here we are with the metaphor of a vehicle again. In her case, the vehicle that she was trying to do was the organization of this class. And everything she kept trying to do to get this class together seemed to be falling apart. So she took this very seriously. She talked to me about the fact that the vehicle of the class would not start. And to her, there was no question that this was a deliberate incident, a deliberate phenomenon that came into her life to elucidate, to explain some kind of a conflict that was going on in her life in that particular moment.
Your points of view seem somewhat unconventional to the layman. Is this in direct contradiction to what those people specializing in dream workshops, dream studies, dream analysis say? Where do you stand within that community in terms of your point of view?
Well, I would divide that community into essentially two halves, and I don't mean to suggest that it's really black and white, that there is no overlapping between those two perspectives. But there are those who are trying to deal with dreams from a more biological perspective, and you find those guys hooking dreamers up to machines and taking measurements of REM, rapid eye movement,
right,
and other kinds of biological actions that go on at night. And then there are those of us who are perhaps approaching this from a more psychological perspective, which tries to find out what your state of consciousness or what your mind is trying to communicate with you through the dreaming phenomenon. Now, the ideas that I suggest in my book, they are certainly different than what the average person has probably grown up thinking. But they're not exactly new ideas either. You can go back easily half a century in the Western world to the work of Carl Jung and find lots of correlations, lots of similarities between what I'm suggesting and what he suggested. And then if you go into indigenous cultures, you find these ideas, sometimes thousands of years old. The idea that dreaming goes on 24 hours a day, and that actually some cultures feel that your awakened state is really the dream state, and your dreaming state is really the awakened state. So there's lots of precedent for this. I think that the thing that my book offers is that it suggests a very simple technique for dealing with these ideas and interpreting these ideas that anyone can learn. When you read Eastern philosophies, for example, that's another place where this whole concept of your awakened life being really a dream, it appears a lot in those cultures. But a lot of those philosophical books tend to leave you hanging a little bit. They say, well, you create your own existence. Your life is a mirror of your own consciousness. And so you read that and you go, okay, well, what do I do with that information? And in Always Dreaming, it says, here's what you can do with it. Here's a way to interpret it. And here is a way to look at those strange phenomena which go on in your life. And you can gain some insight into your own perspective on life, your own point of view, your own conflicts, the things that you are working on in your own life to gain a greater understanding of what life is about.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with more on this fascinating subject, Always Dreaming, Gaining Insights from the Metaphors of Our Sleeping and Waking Lives. David Rivinus. It's published by Ozark Mountain Publishing.